In this episode of American Greed, he's a successful insurance broker. She's a vice president at a leading financial firm.
I mean, she was making close to $250,000 a year. They were living large.
Tina and Joe Corona lived the good life with a nice house and a collection of classic cars.
Tina and I, we did everything together. She loved cars, she loved football.
But Joe has one very dark secret. He's stealing money from clients to finance their fun.
He preyed on people that were friends and family. He didn't prey on strangers. There was nobody he would not steal money from.
How far will Joe Corona go to keep his sins a secret?
I started crying and I said, I don't want to believe this. Please tell me he didn't do this to her. I don't want to believe it.
Shortly after 7 o'clock in the evening, Carrie Brown, a trucking company manager, receives an alarming phone call. It's Joe Corona, the husband of her close friend, Tina Corona. He sounds worried.
He just called somewhat panicky and just said, have you talked to Tina today? And I'm like, no. Has she called you today? No, Joe, what's going on?
Corona explains that he last saw Tina around 10 o'clock that morning when she left home in her black Chevy Avalanche. She planned to run errands in preparation for a party later that evening. But she never came home, Corona says, and she isn't answering her phone.
Well, I went into a straight panic because that's not like her, especially not to answer phone calls from him.
Tina Corona is a 44-year-old financial executive and president of the Memphis Corvette Club. She is so well loved that friends and family immediately form a search party that very night.
They were thinking somebody had abducted her, so I just went looking for that black Avalanche. It was like a massive manhunt for Tina.
The mystery of Tina Corona's disappearance would eventually reveal a sordid financial fraud scheme and murder plot. But just how did Tina and Joe Corona, by all appearances a happy and successful couple, become entangled in this twisted tale? It's a story that begins decades earlier.
I don't know anybody that didn't love Tina. She was the kind of person that you had no choice but to love her, really.
Carrie Brown meets Tina in kindergarten. The two women stay tight through high school and college, and even get their first jobs together as tellers at a local bank.
Customers that adored her would wait until she got back from lunch until she helped them. She's just that kind of person. She was magnetic.
Although she does not have a degree in business or finance, Tina's infectious personality and strong work ethic propel her up the corporate ladder. Within a few years, she's working for the brokerage firm Payne Weber.
She could talk a heating blanket from an Eskimo. She could sell anything. She could make every customer that walked in there happy.
In early 1993, Tina meets her match in the charm department. One afternoon, while out shopping, Tina is swept off her feet by a smooth-talking shoe salesman.
She was like, you're not going to believe this, but I just met somebody at the shoe carnival, and we're going out.
Joe Corona is a manager at the store.
He knew all the right buttons to push with Tina. Lots of attention, flowers all the time, gifts all the time, really winning her over.
Less than a year after meeting, the two are married. But shortly after the wedding, Tina pushes her new husband for a career change. She thinks he can do better than slinging shoes.
So that's when she came to her dad and said, will you take Joe in and train him the insurance business?
Tina's dad, Jim Murphy, is an independent insurance agent. He's eager to teach his new son-in-law the ropes. Two of Joe Corona's earliest clients are his elderly neighbors, Lake and Helen Sturdivant. Their son, David, remembers when Corona first came to call on them.
He would come over to my parents' house and practice his sales pitch on them. Have a live somebody to tell about the product he was selling.
Because they adore Tina, the Sturdivants are willing to take a chance with her new husband. They agree to let Joe open up an annuity for them.
They thought it was a safe deal, and I think they thought they'd be helping out Tina by investing with them.
An annuity is a financial product that is often used to create a future revenue stream in retirement.
When you buy an annuity, you're buying an investment and you're expecting your money to grow in value. And it's really considered a safe investment. There's not a lot of risk involved with an annuity.
Joe Corona's new career is off to a promising start. When American greed returns, Corona takes a high-stakes gamble with his family's fortune.
Joe loved to gamble. Joe and Tina both went to the casinos a lot.
No one ever knew how much money that he was spending in the casinos.
Memphis, Tennessee, home of the legendary Beale Street, where 7 days a week there's always a party going on. And by 2006, the good times are rolling for Joe and Tina Corona. That year, Tina takes an executive job with the financial firm Cantor Fitzgerald. As a vice president in the loan department, she's paid nearly $250,000 a year, according to her good friend, Carrie Brown.
Everyone knew that she was successful and was doing well, but she would never take the credit for all that. She'd be like, oh, Joe's done so well, you know, in the insurance business. He's doing so well.
But she's being far too humble. Most of Joe's clients are Tina's friends. She often accompanies her husband on sales calls.
Anybody that knew Tina would go with them, but that was his bread and butter, people who trusted Tina, therefore they could trust Joe.
With years of experience under his belt, Joe now works out of his own office and away from the watchful eye of his father-in-law. Carrie Brown eventually becomes one of his clients. She purchases a life insurance policy through Joe and considers opening up a $20,000 annuity with him as well.
I said, you know, I've got some money invested in an annuity. It just would make more sense if I put it with someone that I know. So why don't I move my money to you? And Tina was like, it's a great idea. Of course you can move your money to Joe.
But rather than make a phone call and transfer money over to the life insurance company, Joe curiously tells Carrie to make out a check to his business.
He said, just call your broker and tell him that you want a check in full made out to you. You'll sign that check over to me, and then I will invest it with Allianz in the same type of annuity.
Carrie doesn't think twice about the transaction. Joe is the husband of her good friend, Tina.
Complete 100% trust. She was involved. I mean, she was there. She helped sell it.
With his insurance business thriving, Joe picks up a new hobby, collecting classic cars. Within a few years, Joe buys a 1971 Chevelle, a 1969 Daytona yellow Corvette, and a couple of Porsches.
He liked to be seen in them. He was very proud of his cars.
Joe becomes so enamored of his cars that he and Tina join the exclusive Memphis Corvette Club. It's a defining moment, says Tina's younger brother, Scott Murphy.
Joe was all about the appearance of what you had. He was looking to hang out with the people that were in a different class that he felt like had money.
Joe and Tina moved to a bigger house in Cordova, a quiet town in the eastern suburbs of Memphis. The couple are high rollers at the casinos in Tunica, Mississippi, where Joe plays fast and loose with their cash.
Joe loved to gamble. Joe and Tina both went to the casinos a lot.
She hit 10 grand one time, and she was like, it's so much fun. I mean, we're addicted, you know, because we're winning all this money.
But what Tina doesn't yet realize is that, like any addiction, there can be hell to pay. Joe is losing a ton of money. It's not uncommon for him to drop several $1,000s playing blackjack and high-end slots.
He won money, but not enough to cover what he was losing. At one point, I think he was down $90,000.
Next on American Greed, Joe Corona loves life in the fast lane. But will he drive his friends, family, and clients into a financial ditch?
I never really thought he would try to steal money from the family.
In Memphis, Joe and Tina Corona appear to have the perfect marriage. But what Tina doesn't know is that their lifestyle is propped up by fraud. Joe's been pocketing his clients' money for years, says Shelby County Assistant DA Danielle McCullum.
Tina made good money, but I guess that wasn't enough, and he wanted more cars or a bigger house or to go gamble more.
Since 2001, Joe's been stealing money from several clients. He makes it look easy. When Joe sells an annuity to a customer, he often encourages them to write the check directly to him.
The check many times will be made payable to Corona Investments, and Joe would deposit that money into his account, and he would never forward that money to the insurance company.
Some checks went to the insurance companies, some checks went to him. He was very good at what he was doing, so he would mix it up.
Corona's first ever client, Lake Sturdivant, remains his favorite mark.
My dad loved Joe to death. Joe was telling him about all this interest that he was making. And when they would come into some money, most of the time would invest it with Joe.
Unfortunately, Lake rarely asks Joe for any paperwork. It's a mistake made by several of Joe's clients, including Carrie Brown, who has a $20,000 annuity with Joe.
I never got one statement, ever. At the time, the market was not doing well, so I didn't want to look at it.
When clients do press Joe on the subject, he often whips up a fake document.
The amount of time he spent defrauding these people is ridiculous. He would go through and change the amounts. He would retype parts and then repaste that on top and then photocopy it.
Remarkably, while Joe is plundering their friends and family, Tina Corona, vice president of a financial firm, has no idea of the fraud happening right under her nose.
Joe was very controlling of a lot of things in a relationship, but especially the money. He did handle all of the finances.
She said, I don't even realize what I make because it goes into a direct deposit into the account, and Joe gave her allowance. If she needed money, Joe gave her the money.
In June 2007, tragedy strikes Tina's family, and Joe's greed reaches new depths. One night after Jim Murphy attends a classic car show, the 65-year-old dies in his sleep.
She called me about 5 o'clock in the morning, and she was absolutely beside, just, Carrie, Daddy died, Carrie, Daddy died.
While his wife grieves, Joe turns his attention to his father-in-law's car collection. It includes a 1963 Cadillac, a Bentley, and several others, worth more than $100,000.
He came to me and said, your mom's got 6, 7, 8 cars out there that your dad had, and they're not doing anything but losing value, but I'll be glad to help you guys sell it.
The Murphys agree, but Tina's brother, Scott, soon finds out that Joe may not be the trustworthy brother-in-law he thought he was.
When Joe was selling the cars, instead of having the checks made out to my mother, Joe was having the checks made out to Joe Corona.
Joe deposits some cash in Clara's account, but the totals are far less than what the family expects. The family calculates that Joe has shorted them between $30,000 and $40,000.
He had a Nash that he claims he sold for $16,000 right there alone. would have easily, somebody had come up and dropped $25,000 cash on it. The 57 Chevrolet, he let it go for $16,000.
The Chevy's fair market value is $25,000. Two months after the funeral, on August 22, 2007, the family gathers to discuss the transaction. Joe is visibly anxious.
He's sweating, he's shaking. We've just about got him cornered up in a wall.
Joe denies any wrongdoing and tries to talk his way out of the situation. But Scott is armed with solid evidence that Joe has pocketed money owed to the family. He has already contacted the buyer of the 1963 Cadillac, who confirms he paid $12,000 cash for the car. But the Murphys haven't seen a penny.
Well, at first he said, I made the deposit the day of the funeral, and Tina said, Joe, we didn't even go to the bank that day. So that's when he got up from the table.
Joe Corona leaves the house and heads outside to his car. A few minutes later, he returns with a stack of cash.
My sister says, you guys are not going to believe this. He found the money. It fell in between his seats, and it has been there for 2 solid months, and it was $4,000. And I was like, hallelujah, $4,000. Now, where's the other $8,000?
In the face of damning evidence, Tina stands by her man.
It's like she didn't believe us, that she believed Joe. Because she got up, after it was all over with, she got up and said, I've lost my family.
That night, Joe writes a check to his mother-in-law for $35,000. The next day, he pays Scott the other $8,000. Joe and Tina proceed to break off all contact with the Murphys.
Oh, it's like a knife sticking me in my heart. I tried to talk to her. I'd call her at the office and she wouldn't answer my call. I'd send her emails. She wouldn't answer my emails.
Next on American Greed, is there anything Joe Corona won't do for money or to keep his secrets hidden?
I said, I don't want to believe that he's done something wrong, but there's no doubt that he has.
And later, Joe Corona's exclusive interview with American Greed.
I just believe that the truth needs to come out. My side has never been told, and my family and obviously all the people that were involved need to know, what happened.
In Memphis, Joe Corona's greed has opened up a family rift. After his in-laws, the Murphys, accuse him of stealing their money, Tina Corona and her mom stop talking.
She used to drive by her mom's at Thanksgiving, Christmas, see who's there, cry. People have no idea how much that devastated her. It was bad.
While his wife quietly suffers, the first cracks start to appear in Joe's scam. In March 2008, Carrie Brown wants to cash out part of her $25,000 annuity. She needs $10,000 to pay off some bills.
She tried to talk me out of it, and I insisted that it was my money. Give it to me. I want to pay some debt off.
For the next 3 weeks, Carrie waits for the money to be transferred in her bank account, but it never arrives.
On the 3rd week, I called him, and I felt at the time, what's the deal? I've taken money out of investment accounts before. It's never taken this long.
A few days later, the money is finally deposited. But curiously, the wire transfer doesn't come from the insurance company.
Tina's name was on that transfer. And at the time, I thought it was odd, but I got my money. That's all I cared about.
Carrie Brown never mentions the incident to Tina. Besides, Tina has exciting news of her own that she can't wait to share with her friend. She's planning on buying a new home, a $500,000 house in the upscale suburb of Eads. where many of her Corvette Club friends live.
She was so excited about the house. She had been wanting to buy a house out in that area for a really long time.
For years, Joe has quashed his wife's plan of buying a bigger home, telling her they have other expenses that need to be addressed first. The truth is, Joe can't risk exposing his personal finances to the mortgage lenders. According to Danielle McCollum of the Shelby County DA's office, Joe is worried his fraud will be revealed.
He knew what the ramifications would be as far as the financial truth starting to come out. And then Tina was going to start asking questions about that. And it was just going to be a snowball effect before she knew everything.
But Tina is persistent. She won't take no for an answer. In October 2008, Joe finally gives in. They'll buy the dream house. Tina's so happy, on October 23rd, she shares the big news with her girlfriends. According to Carrie Brown, Tina explains that Joe has found a buyer for their current home, and they're going to be closing on the new house that weekend.
She goes, "Oh, girl, it's so great. We've already sold it. They're paying us cash."
Unfortunately, Tina never gets a chance to move into her dream house, as 2 days later, on Saturday, October 25th, something unexpected strikes. Next on American Greed.
I was just devastated. And I pulled up and I was hurling. I lost it. It was just shock.
It's a crisp fall day on Saturday, October 25th, 2008. Joe Corona plans to have a lazy day tinkering on his car at a friend's house, while his wife Tina is out getting party supplies for a Corvette Club shindig that night. But by 6 p.m., Tina hasn't come home from her errands. It's not like her to be late. Around 7 p.m., Joe Corona starts calling Tina's friends.
He just called somewhat panicky and just said, "Have you talked to Tina today?" And I'm like, "No." "Has she called you today?" "No, Joe, what's going on?"
Around this time, the Corvette Club party is just starting when Joe calls.
And then he starts calling all the people at the party. "Have you guys seen Tina? Haven't seen her, haven't heard from her."
Tina's friends are worried, and the party quickly changes into a search party. They spread out and hit all of Tina's regular shopping places, posting flyers and searching for her SUV.
And that's when everyone starts to get really nervous and driving all over the city looking for that black Avalanche. Seeing if it's on the side of the road, maybe she broke down.
On Sunday, the search continues, but there's still no sign of Tina.
Sunday at 1 o'clock till probably 1 o'clock in the morning, I drove around everywhere looking for my sister. I don't even know what I was looking for.
On Monday morning, October 27th, police find a black SUV on a residential street in the Memphis suburb of Bartlett. Kevin Martin is a Bartlett detective. He's one of the first officers on the scene.
I went up and basically looked into the back, and I could see form of a body laying in the back floorboard of this Avalanche.
The license plates match the missing vehicle. Inside, police find what they already suspect: the lifeless body of Tina Corona. There are no bullet or stab wounds, so it's unclear how she died. Given Memphis's reputation for violent crime, police at first think Tina Corona is yet another victim of a carjacking and robbery gone wrong. That theory changes upon closer inspection of the crime scene.
Her hands were duct taped. They were loose, and they weren't even connected. They looked like somebody tried to make it look like her hands had been tied up, which they weren't.
She had diamond rings on both hands, earrings.
And that stuck out like a sore thumb to us. That guy in this area is not going to leave $30,000, $35,000 ring on somebody's finger.
Friends and family are gathered at Joe and Tina's house when police deliver the devastating news.
As they were showing the picture of her dead body to him, there was no emotion. He just shook his head, yes, like, you know, that's her. He acted like he couldn't walk. He was all like, oh, I have no strength, I'm so weak.
The next day, Bartlett police asked Joe to come in for a formal interview to learn what happened on the day Tina went missing.
But you didn't know where she was going first? No, I didn't know where she was going.
Joe tells officers he spent the day working on his Chevelle at a friend's house.
And you're doing your thing at the house, whatever. Well, yeah, and then I was over at a friend's house working on 2 cars. Okay. And I'm guessing I was there by like a little bit after 12.
Joe's alibi checks out. But in the days following her murder, Tina's family grows suspicious of his behavior. He seems more giddy than grieving, and he's eager to move on.
He cleaned out the house. Everything that was Tina's, he got rid of. Her clothes, her shoes. He even threw her Bible away and said, she ain't gonna need this anymore.
Police investigate other suspects, but nothing sticks.
After we started looking at the crime scene and looking at everything, it kept bringing us back to one person.
But there's a problem. Police can't find any physical evidence that ties Joe Corona to the murder. No DNA, no murder weapon. And medical examiners can only determine that Tina died by asphyxiation.
There was no indication whether she'd been suffocated and asphyxiated through suffocation or whether she had been strangled.
The Corona house is beyond tainted, as friends contaminated the premises while searching for Tina.
Over 100, 150 people have been in and out of the house over there where they lived. So any crime scene that we had over there would have been destroyed or wouldn't have been of any use.
Lacking physical evidence, the case stalls. But 3 weeks later, police catch a critical break when Carrie Brown thinks back to her financial dealings with Joe. She remembers that Tina's name was on the wire transfer when she withdrew funds that were supposed to come from her annuity. She calls a friend at the bank and asks her to pull up the transaction.
And she said, oh, no, Carrie, I think this is fraudulent. I said, why? And she said, it came from their personal checking account at Regions Bank.
A call to her insurance company confirms the suspicions of fraud.
I called Allianz, and all they could verify was my life insurance. I said, no, I have an annuity. And this is when I opened it.
Although Brown withdrew $10,000, she believes she still has an annuity worth $15,000.
Well, do you have an account number? Well, no, because he never sent me anything, right? So no, I don't.
Carrie goes to the Bartlett police and tells them that she thinks Joe is running a scam.
So we start thinking, well, Joe's taking money from her. What's he doing with it? And that's when we started looking at everything. All his financial stuff we started looking at.
The police subpoena Corona's bank records and make a shocking discovery. 1 week after Tina's demise, Joe withdrew $30,000 from one of her annuities and forged his late wife's signature on the check.
She had big, happy handwriting, and he scribbled it like, sorry, most men scribble. It was just Tina Corona.
That kind of caught our eye. You know, he's cashing out an annuity check in his wife's name.
Police start to suspect that Tina's murder is inextricably linked to the couple's finances and Tina's dream of buying a new home.
I think it's very clear that Tina thought they were closing very soon on this house. The only person that knew the truth was Joe, that there was no closing that was going to happen. Why he would continue to lead her on, in our opinion, was because he knew there wasn't going to be a closing. He knew he was going to have to kill her. Otherwise, all of this was going to come out.
As a motive develops, the detectives bring in the IRS and the U.S. Postal Inspector. The investigators look deeper into Joe's insurance business and discover that he's stolen nearly $700,000.
This was multiple people. As far as the amount of money that he stole, it was thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars.
They said, wow, boy, did you open a box. You wouldn't believe what he's done to all these other people.
The agencies reach out to Joe's victims. No one has any idea they've been swindled.
Initially, the victims couldn't believe money had been stolen from them. And then when the victims started looking at their records, they realized there was a problem.
Lake Sturtevant takes the biggest hit. He's lost more than $200,000.
He'd sit there in his wheelchair and wring his hands, and he'd say, I just can't believe Joe would do something like that to a crippled old man.
In March 2009, 5 months after Tina's murder, the feds collect enough evidence of financial fraud to search Joe's house and seize his assets. At the same time, local prosecutors get a warrant for his arrest on suspicion of murdering Tina Corona. There's just one problem. Where's Joe?
Yeah, he bolted. I think he knew that it was all coming to a head, and that's when he disappeared.
For the next few weeks, police conduct a massive manhunt for Joe Corona, who's believed to be driving a gray Hummer. In late March, they finally catch a break when a McDonald's employee in Jackson, Tennessee, over 70 miles away, says Joe is a regular customer.
He comes through her McDonald's drive-thru just about every morning for breakfast, and he's in a gray Hummer.
Detective Martin and his partner begin to drive around Jackson searching for the vehicle. Incredibly, after just a few minutes, they spot a gray Hummer in a hotel parking lot.
And so we drove by in the parking lot and looked over, and we knew it was the car by the tag on the vehicle. We saw the tag, and I was like, wow, it's him.
The detectives contact the local authorities and assemble a task force. Accompanied by U.S. Marshals and sheriff's deputies, police descend on Joe's hotel room.
We were going to try the element of surprise. We were going to hit the door, unlock it, and come in and effect the arrest.
But the door is latched, and they can't get in. The police call out to Joe. He doesn't respond. Officers grow tense when they hear a familiar sound inside the room. Next on American Greed.
You could hear a racking sound. It was very distinct. In my line of work, I know what a slide on a weapon is going back and forth, and that's what it was. So we knew he was armed.
After 17 days on the run, police have cornered Joe Corona at a hotel in Jackson, Tennessee. But he isn't going quietly.
Oh, it was high stress. We knew he was armed. We knew he had a weapon in there.
Over the next several moments, officers try to reason with the fugitive.
I was like, well, you need to come out. I'm not coming out. You know, I've got a gun in here. He could hear him racking it. And I'm like, yeah, Joe, we've got a lot of guns out here too. You know, we don't want to resort to that.
After 20 minutes, Joe finally relents.
I just told him, all it's going to do is delay the inevitable of what's going to happen. You're going to go to jail. We're going to come in and get you one way or another.
Joe knows he's trapped. He puts down the gun and gives himself up. The manhunt is finally over. In an exclusive interview with American Greed, Joe Corona talks about the events of that day. According to him, the situation is blown out of proportion.
There was no armed stand-up. By the time they knocked at the door and told me, well, all I had to do was get dressed before I opened the door to let them in. But there was no armed stand-up. That's all garbage that they made up to make it look bad.
The news of Joe's arrest spreads quickly.
I was driving down the 64 highway, and Scott said, they've arrested Joe. And I just started screaming. I got out of the car, and I just said, thank you, God, thank you.
Over the next 3 years, Joe sits in jail, denied bail for being a flight risk, and waits for the murder case to go to trial. At the same time, federal prosecutors indict Joe on 57 counts of insurance fraud, mail fraud, and money laundering. Edward Stanton is the U.S. Attorney for Western Tennessee.
He preyed upon individuals he knew that were vulnerable. We wanted to make sure that Joe Corona was held accountable to the fullest extent of the law.
But before the federal case can proceed, the state must first move forward on the murder charge.
It was very difficult because this wasn't a case about whether or not he stole money, but the financial part was a piece of the puzzle and whether or not he killed Tina.
In October 2012, Joe Corona goes on trial for the murder of Tina Corona. Prosecutors paint him as a con man without a conscience, someone who would rather commit murder than give up his posh lifestyle. Detective Martin believes that in the days leading up to the murder, Tina had inklings that Joe was a fraud.
Either she received something in the mail, or she found out, or received a phone call, and I think she confronted him about that. And his whole world was going to be dissolved if she went and told anybody about what he was doing.
In his interview with American Greed, Joe Corona disputes the accusation and insists he could never hurt Tina.
I'm not a cold-blooded person. I've never done anything like this. I have no police involvement in anything. I certainly couldn't kill anybody, much less my wife.
Though the events of that day still aren't exactly known, prosecutors believe Joe suffocated Tina at their home on that Saturday morning. He then drove the Avalanche to the spot where it was discovered. Cell phone records confirm Joe was in the area of where Tina's SUV was found. And there's one more fact linking Joe to the site. His storage unit, where he keeps his classic cars, is just a quarter-mile away.
When we looked at cell phone records, the records did show that Joe drove from his house and drove that direction into Bartlett. Joe told the police that he never went to the storage unit that day. Well, his cell phone records told us something very different.
Joe's defense team argues that the police mishandled the crime scene and that there's no physical evidence linking him to Tina's murder.
Ask the police, how did I do this? If they're so sure that I did it, how did I do it? Where did I do it? You know, none of those things were ever explained because they couldn't be explained, because they don't know.
After 9 days of arguments, the jury retires to deliberate. It only takes them an hour and a half to reach a verdict. On November 1st, 2012, exactly 4 years to the day since Tina's funeral, Joe Corona is found guilty of first-degree murder.
I just threw my head back and said, thank you, Lord, thank you, Lord. I was just, I was happy.
Joe is sentenced to life in prison. He isn't eligible for parole until 2063, when he'll be 99 years old.
He'll be in prison for 50-something years for murdering my sister, and I am thankful for that. He will never see daylight. He will never come out of prison. He'll die in prison.
On February 26, 2013, Joe pleads guilty to the federal indictment and gets another 7 years tacked on to his prison sentence.
The reason that I pled guilty out to those accounts is because that's what was in my best interest. I do not believe the system was after the truth. I was not going to try to go to another trial again with an unpaid lawyer.
The feds say Joe stole nearly $800,000 from 18 clients.
These victims were devastated. They had saved and planned on saving for themselves and their kids, and they lost their money.
A number of these individuals, it was their life savings, retirement savings. These were not individuals that were looking for a get-rich-quick scheme or an enormous return on investment.
Lake Sturtevant is the biggest victim, losing more than $209,000. But Joe's first and best customer never receives any satisfaction as Lake passes away in 2010 at the age of 84. Some of the victims, including Kerry Brown, are compensated by the insurance companies that Corona claimed he had invested with. Others, however, are waiting for restitution from the court.
We have seized multiple vehicles, personal property, again, sports memorabilia, motorcycles. We're in the process of liquidating those, and it's our hope that we will be able to do everything we can to provide restitution to the multiple victims here.
To this day, Joe Corona believes Tina was murdered on a busy road close to where she was found, and that the real killer is still on the loose.
The bottom line is, a lot of the people I used to hang out with, their wives are on that same street every day. This is going to do it again, and I just pray to God that it's not somebody else that I know.
But his victims say Joe Corona is where he belongs, behind bars and forced to account for his financial crimes and the murder of a woman that so many loved.
Why did you steal from all these old people? Why did you kill Tina?
I mean, it's gratifying that he'll pay for his crime. Still doesn't change anything. It is what it is. I mean, she's gone.
I'd like for them to put a big picture of Tina on his wall where he couldn't get it down so he could see her every day and what he's done to her. I just wish we could have talked before all this happened. She could have come to me. But that wasn't God's plan, was it?
Hey there. Welcome to Midnight Sleep. Crime. I'm here to help you relax. Tonight, I know many of you use this video to fall asleep. So, before you get cozy, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I'd love to hear from you. Story 1. When a new tenant moved into the Meadowbrook apartments, she didn't know she was sharing a wall with a dead woman, or that the building itself was hiding what really happened to her. Rain fell in lazy streaks down the windows of Meadowbrook apartments, blurring the reflection of the gray October sky. The building looked old but alive, the kind of place where secrets didn't die, they just echoed between thin walls. Sarah Linton, 27, watched the rain through her car windshield as the moving truck idled behind her. She'd driven 6 hours to start over. New job, new city, new apartment. She didn't know much about Meadowbrook, only that it was cheap and close to work. The online listing had said, quiet complex, long-term tenants, recently renovated. But as she stepped out and stared up at the building, the paint seemed to peel. Before her eyes, a woman in a pink robe was smoking by the mailboxes, watching her with a kind of detached curiosity. You moving in? She asked, voice growly, from years of cigarettes. Sarah smiled, awkwardly. Yeah, Unit 409. The woman froze for a second. Barely, but enough. That Sarah noticed. Then she forced a small smile. Oh, top floor corner. Lucky. Quiet up there. Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. The woman flicked her ash into a puddle. Sure, quiet. Sarah brushed it off. People in small Apartment buildings always had quirks. She thanked the movers, tipped them too much, and by late afternoon her new life was stacked neatly in brown boxes against faded beige walls. The air inside the unit smelled faintly like bleach and something else underneath. Old wood, maybe mildew. The manager, Mr. Renner, had said the last tenant left in a hurry, so they'd done a deep clean. When she unpacked the kitchen, Sarah found a single cabinet nailed shut. Weird, but she left it. The walls in the bedroom were unevenly painted, as though someone had covered up holes. Still, she tried to make it home. By sunset, she lit a candle, opened a bottle of wine, and sat cross-legged on the floor with a slice of takeout pizza, scrolling through her phone. That's when the first sound came. Knock, knock. 3 sharp raps, steady, deliberate. From the wall behind her bed. She froze. Her apartment shared one wall with unit for 10, or so the floor plan said. Hello, she called, half laughing to herself. No answer. A moment later, a faint hum began like static from a dead television channel. It pulsed, rising and falling in a rhythmic pattern. 2. Structured to be random. Sarah pressed her ear to the wall. It was a woman's voice, faint, almost a whisper. Help me. Sarah stumbled backward, her heart hammering. She turned off the TV, the candle, even her phone. Silence. Then, again, through the wall, clearer this time, almost pleading. They never found me. Sarah's breath caught. Her rational brain screamed, it's a prank. It's a neighbor with a TV on. But the tone in that voice, trembling, desperate, didn't sound like fiction. That night, she slept on the couch with the lights on. The next morning, Sarah went downstairs to complain, but the office was locked. Mr. Renner's hours were apparently flexible. Instead, she found the smoking woman again, now in jeans and a denim jacket. She was sliding a letter into her mailbox. Hey, Sarah said, forcing a smile. Do you know who lives in 410? The woman looked up slowly. Nobody. Sarah blinked. Nobody. I thought this building was full. Not that one. Been empty since. Well, she paused, lowering her voice. Since the girl disappeared. Sarah frowned. Disappeared? The woman shrugged. Cops came 2 years back. Never found her body. Said she probably ran off. But you know how it is. People hear things. What kind of things? A long drag of her cigarette, crying, knocking. Music playing from an empty apartment. That sort of thing. Sarah tried to laugh it off, and they still ran it out. The woman's mouth curled into a humorless smile. Oh, honey, they rent out everything here. People move in, some move out, some don't. Sarah looked back toward her unit, top floor corner. Window, the one with peeling white blinds. For the first time, she noticed the faint outline of a handprint on the inside of the glass. That night, Sarah did what any rational person would. She Googled Meadowbrook Apartments. Disappearance. One article popped up, a small local headline from August 2019. Young woman reported missing from Meadowbrook Apartments. Name, Rebecca. Ames, 25. Last seen entering Unit 410 after returning from a night shift. No forced entry. No sign of struggle. Neighbors reported strange noises the night she vanished. Case remains open. There was a photo attached. Rebecca had shoulder-length dark hair and a quiet smile. The kind of person who might have gone unnoticed in a crowd. Sarah stared at the photo for a long time, then looked at the wall again. Behind that plaster was where Rebecca had lived or died. Around midnight, Sarah couldn't Sleep. She poured a glass of water and sat by the window. The building across the street was dark except for one flickering street lamp. Then faint, almost imperceptible, she heard the knocking again. Knock, knock. 3 times. This time she didn't move. She whispered, "Rebecca," silence. She waited a full minute before setting her glass down. And that's when she saw it. In the condensation on the window beside her, letters forming slowly as though written from the other side of the glass. 409, her own apartment number. The water glass shattered as she dropped it. She stumbled back, her heartbeat roaring in her ears. And beneath the hum of the refrigerator, beneath the rain outside, she heard that whisper again, coming not from the wall, but from inside the room. "They put me here." By morning, Sarah packed her bags. But when she tried to leave, the front door latch wouldn't turn. The knob spun freely in her hand like it wasn't connected to anything. She called the building office. No answer. She called the emergency maintenance number from the lease. It rang once, then cut to static. And through that static, the faintest of voices. "Stay." Sarah dropped the phone. Her reflection in the TV screen stared back, pale, eyes wide, shaking. But the reflection wasn't alone. Behind her, faint and ghost-like, stood the outline of another woman. The same dark hair, the same eyes. Rebecca Ames. By morning, the rain had turned to a dull drizzle that painted streaks down the window. Sarah barely slept. Every creak in the building made her tense. The whisper, that whisper, still replayed in her mind, like a broken record. She told herself it was exhaustion, nerves from moving, or maybe a neighbor's television, bleeding through the walls. But the handprint on the glass and the voice from the static, those weren't dreams. She needed answers. Sarah left Unit 409 early and went straight to the leasing office. The blinds were half drawn and the glass door had a cracked open sign that swayed slightly in the draft. Inside, the office smelled faintly of coffee and old carpet cleaner. At the front desk sat Mr. Renner, the property manager in his late 50s with slicked back silver hair and a polite smile that never reached his eyes. "Morning, Miss Linton," he said, glancing up from a clipboard. "Settling in all right." She hesitated. "Actually, I wanted to ask you something about my apartment. The unit next to mine, 410, is it occupied?" Renner's pen paused mid-signature. "Why do you ask?" "I thought I heard something last night, like knocking and maybe a voice." He chuckled, a sound that felt rehearsed. "Old pipes happens all the time in buildings this age. Don't worry. Maintenance has been working on it." "I don't think it was the pipes," Sarah pressed. "The voice said something. It said they put me here." The smile faltered just slightly. "I wouldn't worry yourself with that kind of talk." He shifted the papers on his desk. "Unit 410 is unoccupied. Has been for some time." "How long?" Renner leaned back. 2 years. Maybe a little more." She swallowed since the woman went missing. That got his attention. His head lifted slowly. "Where? Did you hear that?" "One of the neighbors." He exhaled through his nose, then lowered his voice. "You shouldn't listen to gossip, Miss Linton. This building's had its share of stories. People get lonely, and when you live with thin walls long enough, you start to hear things that aren't really there." His tone was final, but his eyes said something else, something evasive. That afternoon, Sarah returned to her apartment and stood outside the door to 410. The paint around the frame was newer, smoother than the other doors, like someone had replaced it recently. A faint outline where the number plate had One spin was still visible. She tried. The knob, of course. But when she pressed her ear to the door, she heard a faint sound, not a voice, but a mechanical hum like a low electric vibration. A refrigerator, a fan. There shouldn't have been power in an empty unit. She crouched and peered through the gap under the door. Darkness, then a flicker, a flash of white light that pulsed once, like the quick burst of a camera flash. Sarah jerked back, heart racing. That evening she met the smoking woman again by the mailboxes. "Hey," Sarah said quietly. "Can I ask you something?" The woman smirked. "You already are. Last night I heard someone in 410, but Renner said it's empty." The woman's eyes darkened. "It is empty officially, but that doesn't mean nobody's there." "What do you mean?" She took a drag of her cigarette. "After the cops cleared out, they sealed the place. Said it was unsafe, something about the wiring. But a few months later, people started hearing noises. Again. Same kind of things the last girl reported before she vanished. Then, management rented out 409 to me." The woman flicked her ash into the gutter. "Funny thing, isn't it? They never seem to leave 410 vacant for long. Someone's always near it. Maybe they're hoping someone else hears her, too." Sarah stared. "You think Rebecca Ames is still in there?" The woman's lips tightened. "I think parts of her are. The question is, why do you hear her?" That night, Sarah couldn't stay still. Every time she passed the wall dividing her bedroom from 410, she felt a pressure, a weight in the air, like being underwater. She set her phone to record audio before bed, hoping to prove or disprove the noise. Hours later, she woke to silence. Or so she thought. Her phone was still, recording, the screen faintly glowing on her nightstand. Then came the sound. Knock, knock. 3 times, same as before. Sarah froze, eyes wide open in the dark. Her phone's mic picked up. Something faint beneath it, a whisper. She could barely make out. She turned on the light. "Rebecca," she said softly. No response. The knocking stopped, but the recording kept going, and when she played it back, she heard something that hadn't been audible to her ears in the moment. "Check the drawer." Sarah's gaze darted to the nightstand beside her bed. It was one of the few pieces of furniture the unit had come with. She slowly opened the top drawer, empty, except for a single item tucked in the back, a small tarnished key tagged with a metal label that read 410B. Her pulse quickened. The next morning, Sarah decided to test it. She waited until the hallway was quiet. The key felt cold in her palm as she slipped it into the lock on 410's door. The fit, not perfectly, but enough to turn. The bolt clicked. The door creaked open an inch, exhaling a breath of stale, cold air. "Hello," she whispered. No answer. She pushed. It opened further. Dust coated the floor, and the faint smell of mold and something metallic like rust or dried blood lingered in the air. There was no furniture, no boxes, just walls. And on the far one, a patch where the wallpaper had been torn away, revealing what looked like dozens of small holes drilled into the plaster. As she stepped inside, the hum grew louder. It wasn't coming from an appliance. It came from behind the walls themselves. Then she saw it. A wire leading from a vent in the ceiling down into the wall cavity, ending at an old security camera. Its lens cracked but faintly glowing red. The power light flickered once, twice, then died. Sarah's stomach dropped. This was supposed to be a sealed, empty unit. No power, no monitoring equipment. But Someone had been watching. She backed toward the door, trying not to make noise. That's when she noticed a faint smudge on the floor. Shoe prints, dusty, but distinct, smaller than her own. Someone had been in there recently. Then, from the corner of the room came a low click. Sarah froze. It came from the clochette door. Her hand trembled as she reached for it. Slowly, she pulled the handle open. Inside, a folded blanket lay on the floor, and beneath it a tape recorder still running. She crouched and hit stop then play. The tape hissed with static, and then if you're hearing this, you're not supposed to be here. My name is Rebecca Ames. I worked the night shift at the diner on Park Avenue. He followed me home. He said the walls could hear everything. They built a room. Behind this one, a false wall. That's where he keeps the others. Sarah's breath hitched. She stopped the tape and stumbled back, gripping the door frame to steady herself. By the time she locked her own door behind her, she was shaking. She wanted to call the police, but what would she say? That she broke into a sealed unit because of a voice in the wall? Instead, she opened her laptop and searched Rebecca Ames' police report. The case file wasn't public, but one old forum thread came up, a local discussion board. A user named Bellamy, Watcher, had written the girl in 410 tried to report someone in the building weeks before she vanished. Said she heard movement in the ceiling and saw holes drilled behind the vents. Police dismissed it, but maintenance came the next day. After that, nobody saw her again. Sarah scrolled down. The last reply, dated just 2 weeks ago, said, I used to work maintenance at Meadowbrook. 410 wasn't the only unit with hidden rooms. Checked the vent in 409. Her stomach turned to ice. She climbed onto her bed, unscrewed the metal vent cover above her head, and pointed her phone flashlight inside. At first, just dust and wires. Then, deeper. Inside, she saw it. A camera lens, teeny and black, aimed straight down at her bed. Beneath it, carved into the metal duct, were 2 words scratched by hand. Help me. Sarah dropped the vent cover and fell back, choking on fear. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might break through her chest and then faintly through the wall again. He's still here. The smell of old bleach hung heavy in the air. Detective Aaron Cole pressed a gloved hand against the steel door of the maintenance room, the one that the apartment manager, Greg Hensley, claimed hadn't been opened in months. The hallway lights flickered, throwing her shadow across the peeling beige walls. Every instinct she had screamed that something was wrong. She said quietly. Greg fumbled with his ring of brass keys. His hands trembled, and the jangling echoed down the hallway. Detective, I swear nobody's been in here. The last maintenance guy, Paul, he quit after the pipe burst last year. Cole didn't respond. The moment she had stepped into the Elmbridge complex, something about it had unsettled her. Not just the smell, or the way every sound seemed to echo, but the residents themselves. Too quiet, too watchful. She turned to her partner, Detective Nash Rivera, who was crouched near the floor, shining his flashlight into the gap beneath the door. There's something wedged behind it, he murmured, like a cart or something heavy. Greg swallowed hard. I told you. I don't. Cole cut him off with a look. Save it. The lock clicked. The door didn't budge. Nash leaned his shoulder against it and pushed. It gave a groan of metal on concrete before finally giving way with a loud rusty creak. The smell hit them first, not just bleach this time, but something underneath it. Something sour. Cole stepped in, flashlight sweeping across the dark room. The beam caught on walls lined with broken janitorial supplies, buckets, mops, stacks of old cleaning rags. There was a workbench to the left, littered with screwdrivers and open toolboxes. And in the far corner she froze. A metal cart stood half-shrouded. Beneath a tarp, wheels locked in place. Beneath the tarp, the outline of something human-shaped lay still. Nash inhaled sharply. A hell. Cole motioned for the tarp. Together they lifted it. Underneath lay a man's body face down, wrapped tightly in layers of industrial plastic wrap. Blood had seeped through, in patches like rust. A laminated ID badge dangled from his belt. Paul Higgins, maintenance technician. Greg staggered back, gagging. Oh God. Oh my God. I didn't know he was. Cole stepped closer. You said he quit. Greg's eyes darted toward the door. That's what I was told. He said he was leaving town. Who told you? The building owner. Greg stammered. Miss Carpenter. She said she got a call from him. Cole's jaw tightened. You ever hear his voice on that call yourself? He shook his head. Rivera crouched near the body, lifting the edge of the plastic just enough to see the man's face. The skin was gray, marbled. Judging by the lividity, he's been here at least a few months, maybe longer. Cole scanned the walls. No cameras in this hallway. Greg hesitated again. They've been out of order for a while. Nash chuckled darkly. Convenient. Cole ignored him. She turned toward the far wall. A black electrical conduit ran from the ceiling down to a breaker box marked utility control, but something about it looked off. Too new. Why is this wiring so fresh? She asked. Greg frowned. What do you mean? She traced the conduit with her flashlight. The screws holding it in place were shiny, uncorroded, unlike everything else in the building. She followed it down to the breaker box, crouched, and flipped it open. Inside, rows of switches labeled East Wing lights, HVAC, and basement security. But at the bottom, a new breaker was taped over, crudely with masking tape scrolled in. Permanent marqueur. Do not turn off room. 109 feet. Room 109, Cole repeated. That's where the missing tenant lived. Greg's face went pale. You think? I think whoever killed Paul didn't just want to hide the body. They were hiding something else in this building. Nash leaned over her shoulder. Electric feed. Could mean anything. Power to a camera, a computer, maybe something running. Non-stop. Cole stood. Let's find out. 2 hours later, room 109's door stood half open. Cole pushed it wider, revealing an apartment stripped bare, except for the essentials. A mattress on the floor, a folding chair, and a single, humming desktop computer against the wall, the only thing plugged into the outlet. The glow of its screen painted the room in pale blue light. Jesus. Nash muttered, crouching beside it. This thing's ancient, but it's on. Cole scanned the room. No decorations. No photos, no signs of normal living. Only cables snaking up into the ceiling, through drilled holes. She touched one. Same wiring as the maintenance room. Nash tapped a key. The monitor flickered, then displayed a plain black interface with dozens of numbered squares labeled camp_01, cam02, and so on. He clicked one. A feed came to life. A grainy view of a hallway, timestamped April 2018. Another feed showed a stairwell, then a laundry room, all of them playing in silent loops. Cole's breath hitched. These are archived. He was recording everything. Nash clicked through more feeds. One showed the lobby, and they're standing in front of the elevator was Greg Hensley, the manager, talking animatedly to someone just outside frame. The time stamp read 2 months after Paul disappeared, but the next feed froze. Cold. The camera angle faced Paul. Higgins himself in the maintenance room, alive stacking bleach bottles. He turned toward the camera as though hearing something off-screen, then stiffened. His mouth opened in shock. The feed cut to static. Nash exhaled. That's it. That's the last clip. Cole turned toward Greg. So, you want to tell me again you didn't know about any of this? I swear to you, I didn't. Greg stammered. I didn't even know there were cameras. Carpenter said the system was decommissioned years ago. Cole narrowed her eyes. And yet, someone reactivated it. Someone who needed to watch this place without anyone noticing. She crouched beside the computer, scrolling through the other footage folders. The most recent dated last week. The folder opened to a grainy feed of a hallway, the same one outside the manager's office. The timestamp blinked 3:14 a.m. Greg was asleep at his desk in the footage. Then the door behind him opened quietly. A figure stepped inside, dressed in black coveralls. A gloved hand reached over Greg's desk and placed something down. Cole paused the footage, zoomed in. It was a small black tape recorder. Her stomach turned cold. Nash glanced at her. Cole, you remember the one left outside your car last week? Same model, she murmured. Same brand. Whoever's been watching this building, they're watching us too. They took the computer for evidence that night. But as Cole stepped into the parking lot, the still air of the complex seemed heavier. A single light flickered above the manager's office. Somewhere inside the vents she heard the faintest hum, like a distant frequency vibrating low through the walls. She looked back once at the rows of dark windows. For a split second she thought she saw a shadow pass behind one of them, a figure standing perfectly still, watching her. Then it was gone. Cole climbed into her car, locked the doors, and started the engine. The radio crackled alive on its own. A soft, distorted voice whispered through the static. Detective Cole, you're not supposed to be here. The signal cut, leaving only silence. Cole stared at the dashboard, frozen, the hum of the Elmage complex still echoing in her head. Something inside those walls wasn't just recording the tenants. It was listening to them. And now it was listening to her. Rain had begun to fall. By the time Detective Aaron Cole and her partner Nash Rivera returned to the Elmage complex the next morning, the water pulled in cracks along the parking lot, reflecting the flicker of the neon vacancy sign above the entrance. The same sign that seemed somehow to always stay lit. Cole gripped a thermos of coffee in one hand and the evidence bag in the other. Inside was the tape recorder recovered from the surveillance footage. It had no fingerprints, no residue, not even dust. Whoever left it had been careful. Same signal pattern as the others. Nash asked as they stepped through the lobby doors. Cole nodded. Low-frequency interference, just below audible range. The lab says it's similar to feedback used in early radio. Encryption, like someone was transmitting on a private band. Nash let out a slow whistle. So we've got a dead maintenance man, a building full of ghost tenants, and a hidden surveillance system broadcasting to God knows where. Cole gave a faint, humorless smile. Welcome to Elmage. Greg, the building manager, was waiting near the front desk, wringing his hands. His eyes were ringed with sleeplessness. You're back. We never left, Cole said, flashing her badge. We need access to the East Wing, specifically room 207. Greg's brows knitted. That room's empty. Has been for months. Cole looked at him steadily. Funny, because the apartment directly across from it, 208, matches. Its floor plan exactly, only reversed. He blinked. So Nash said, when a building's layout mirrors itself, every sound, every vibration carries through the walls in ways you wouldn't expect. If someone's recording tenants, that's the room they'd be using. Greg looked confused, but nodded, fumbling for the keys. The hallway leading to room 207 smelled faintly of wet concrete and old paint. The rain outside tapped against the narrow windows. When Cole reached the door, she noticed the brass number plate was slightly crooked, as if it had been removed and put back. She turned the key. The door opened into a near-perfect replica of the other apartments. A kitchenette, a small living space, a single window facing the street. But something felt wrong. Immediately, there was a hollow. Her flashlight beam caught thin grooves along the walls, long clean slits, running vertically like surgical cuts through the plaster. She stepped closer, tracing them with her gloved finger. These aren't cracks, she said quietly. They're vents. Nash moved past her, checking the corners. For what? Audio. Cole crouched beside the baseboard. A small metal panel had been screwed into the wall, painted the same color as the plaster. She pried it open with her pocket knife. Behind it, a dense web of fiber optic cables. Nash whistled again. Well, I'll be damned. Cole followed the cables along the wall toward what appeared to be a mirror mounted above a small dresser. She tilted her flashlight toward it and froze. The mirror wasn't reflecting properly. Her reflection seemed delayed just by a fraction of a second. Nash caught her expression. You see that? Cole stepped closer. She raised her hand. Her reflection hesitated, then mimicked the movement. Half a second later. That's not a mirror, she whispered. She pulled out her pen light and shone it into the glass. The surface revealed the faint outline of a lens buried beneath like a two-way observation panel. Someone's been watching from the other side. Nash circled to the adjacent unit, room 208, while Cole stayed behind. Through her earpiece, she heard the static of his footsteps, the door opening. You're not going to like this. What is it? Room 208's walls line up perfectly with that fake mirror, but it's sealed off. Drywall spin added over the door frame. No access point. Cole turned to the mirror again. The thought hit her like ice. Then the space between 207 and 208 is a hidden room. Nash finished. Probably where the camera feeds were routed from. Cole took a breath. Get a crew here. I want that wall opened. By noon, forensics had peeled back the drywall between the two apartments. Behind it, they discovered a narrow chamber barely wide enough for a person to stand in, running the entire length of the building's east wall. Inside, there was dust, wires, and 3 old monitors stacked on a metal rack. A swivel chair faced the observation glass that looked directly into room 207 and, by extension, any tenant who had ever stayed there. Cole stepped into the chamber. The smell was suffocating, hot, plastic, and something metallic. Her flashlight beam found a small wooden table near the monitors. On it sat a black binder marked in fading ink. Tenant observation log 2014 to 2019. She opened it. Each page listed names, unit numbers, and timestamps, but no explanations. Every few entries were marked with a red X and a single note beside it. Removed from lease. Nash leaned over her shoulder. Removed, he repeated. As an evicted, Cole turned the page. The final entry read, Room 207. Subject A, female 32. Compliant. Final. Session recorded. Log transferred to the black room. Cole's brow furrowed. The black room. Greg, standing nervously at the door, blurted out, That's not here. That's another building. Or at least that's what I heard. MS. Carpenter talked about it once, said it was part of the original Elmage estate before they converted this into apartments. Cole looked up sharply. Where? Greg swallowed. Across the river off Bellamy Hill Road. Later that evening, Cole and Nash sat in the precinct's dim evidence room, watching the digitized footage recovered from the hidden chamber. The first file opened to static. Then the image stabilized, revealing a woman sitting on the bed in room 207. She appeared nervous, glancing occasionally toward the mirror, unaware that someone was filming from behind it. Cole leaned closer to the monitor. Timestamp. February 2018, Nash said, checking the metadata 2 months before Paul Higgins disappeared. The woman stood pacing, mumbling to herself. Then she stopped and turned toward the mirror as if sensing something on the other side. She tilted her head. Her lips moved. Cole turned up the volume only to hear faint breathing through the speakers, but not hers. It was deeper, mechanical, distorted. Then the woman's expression changed. She looked afraid. She reached toward the mirror, and on the other side of the glass, faintly illuminated by the lens, a second hand reached back. The feet cut to black. Cole sat in silence. Do we have an ID on her? Nash shook his head. No lease record. She's not in any tenant file Greg gave us. Cole rubbed her temples. She's one of the removed names from the log. Nash flipped through the binder again. If the black rooms, where they took them after this, then we're not dealing with just one apartment, Cole finished grimly. We're dealing with an operation. That night, long after the precinct emptied out, Cole sat alone in her car outside the Elmage complex. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still heavy with clouds. She reached for her police radio to call dispatch and froze. The radio was on. No signal, just static. But beneath it, faintly, a voice whispered through the interference. Detective Cole, room 207, isn't the only mirror. Her blood ran cold. She looked up in the top floor window of the building. The light flicked on. In room 207, a figure stood behind the glass. So watching her, and though she couldn't see their face, she saw the glint of something metallic in their hand, a reflection of her own badge. Then the light went out. The next morning broke gray and windless. The clouds hung low over the city, pressing down like a lid. And Detective Aaron Cole couldn't shake the feeling that the Elmage case had finally started, breathing on its own. Something alive, pulsing just below the surface. She hadn't slept. The voice on the radio the night before still echoed in her mind. Room 207 isn't the only mirror. She replayed it again and again, trying to convince herself it was some kind of interference, a cross signal from dispatch or maybe feedback from a nearby tower. But deep down she knew better. Someone was inside her frequency. Cole poured another cup of bitter station coffee and stared at the city map spread across her desk. On it she'd marked every known property owned by Carpenter. Really, the holding company behind the Elmage complex. 3 sites were circled in red. The third, a decaying structure just outside city limits, labeled Bellamy Storage and Archives, matched Greg's vague description of the black room. Her partner, Nash Rivera, walked in, tossing a file onto her desk. You were right. Bellamy Hill Road leads straight to that storage site. It was originally part of the Carpenter family estate, sold off in 1997. Still active. He shook his head. No. Power, no listed tenants. But here's the kicker. He flipped open the file. Revealing Grenier surveillance photo. From 2 nights ago. Maintenance lights came on at 3:17 a.m. Cameras caught a delivery van leaving an hour later. Plates registered to a shell company out of Delaware. Cole stared at the images. The van's rear doors were marked with a faded company logo. Harmonic Systems LC, the same manufacturer name etched onto the old monitors in the mirror chamber. Let's go, she said, grabbing her coat. The drive to Bellamy Hill took them through back roads lined with skeletal trees. The fog hadn't lifted. If anything, it had thickened, swirling around the car like smoke. When the GPS declared they'd arrived, there was no sign of a building at first. Then the road curved and a sprawling brick structure appeared through the mist. Its windows blacked out, its roof sagging inward. A corroded sign near the gate. Read. Bellamy Storage and Archives. E. 1954. The padlock on the gate was new. Cole and Nash exchanged a look. Someone's been here, Nash murmured. Cole nodded. She cut through the lock with a bolt cutter and pushed the gate open. The hinges screamed in protest. Inside, the air was colder, heavier. The ground sloped downward toward a loading bay. The walls bore stains of rust and mildew, and the faint scent of burnt plastic lingered. They entered through a side door, weapons drawn. The interior was massive, a warehouse of storage, units stacked floor to ceiling. But toward the back, a section of the concrete floor had been torn up and replaced with steel plating. Power cables snaked out from underneath, running toward a reinforced door painted jet black. Cole approached it slowly. The paint wasn't just black. It was glossy, reflective. When her flashlight hit it, she saw their faces in warped, distorted reflections. Above the doorway, someone had scrolled a message in white chalk. Access by frequency only. Nash frowned. What the hell does that mean? Cole raised her portable scanner, the same device used to trace the building's signal interference. She dialed through frequencies until the meterspøkt at 19. 7 kilohertz just outside human hearing range. Then, with a low, metallic groan, the door unlatched itself. The room beyond was pitch dark. When the lights flickered on, they revealed a long, narrow corridor lined with glass observation windows. Behind each pane-out equipment, reel-to-reel machines, magnetic tape recorders, oscilloscopes, and stacked speakers. Every monitor hummed with static. This isn't a storage unit, Nash whispered. It's a control room. Cole moved closer to one of the panes. On the other side, a small sterile chamber was visible. Padded walls, a metal chair bolted to the floor, and a microphone hanging from the ceiling. Her breath caught. It's a testing cell. Nash examined the console. Nearest him, these dials they control transmission frequencies. He pointed at the labels etched beneath each knob. Subject 1A, room 207. Subject 1B, room 306, subject 2C, mirror fille des zones. Cole felt her stomach twist. These are apartments. They were broadcasting directly into the tenants' rooms. Broadcasting what? Nash asked. Cole pressed play on one of the recorders. A burst of static filled the air, followed by a low hum, then a voice, faint but distinct, rising through the white noise. You will sleep now. You will not. Remember this voice when you wake. You will trust the walls.
The voice was calm.
Professional. Cole froze.
She
Recognized the cadence, the deliberate tone of a psychiatrist giving hypnotic
suggestion.
Nash stared at the machine. They were running experiments. Behavioral conditioning, Cole muttered, using subaudible frequencies to induce compliance. The tenants weren't being watched, they were being programmed.
At
the far end of the room, another door stood slightly ajar.
behind it lay a
smaller office filled with paperwork, faded ID badges, and several locked filing cabinets. On the desk sat a cracked nameplate. Drive this Harland, Director of Cognitive Research.
Cole
Pulled open one of the drawers and found a set of Polaroids bound with rubber
bands.
The photos showed individual tenants sitting in their apartments, all staring blankly at the mirrors.
Some
were mid-gesture as if responding to unseen cues. Others looked terrified. The last photo was of Paul Higgins, the missing maintenance man.
He was seated
in front of the mirror in room 207, mouth open in mid-scream. Scrolled across the bottom of the photo were 3 words in black marker. He heard everything. Cole's pulse quickened. Nash, this isn't just surveillance.
This is a
neurological trial. Nash finished grimly. And I bet our good doctor here never reported a single subject death. They cracked open the filing cabinet. Inside were dozens of manila folders, each labeled with a patient code.
The
earliest dated back to 2010. Many were marked terminated. Cole opened one at
random.
Inside was a medical chart describing prolonged insomnia, paranoia, and auditory hallucinations.
All
following residents at the Elmage
complex.
Look at the signatures, she said, pointing to the bottom of the
page.
Drive as Harlan signed every evaluation. Nash scanned the document, and his license was revoked in 2012, right before he disappeared.
Cole felt the
pieces locking into place. The experiments didn't stop when Harlan vanished. They moved. Someone else kept the project alive. She turned to the wall calendar still hanging in the office. The last date circled in red had read January 9th, 2023. Mirror. Maintenance/subject.
Recall.
That was just 2 weeks before Higgins went missing. A noise echoed. Down the hall, a faint scrape of metal. On concrete, Cole drew her gun, motioning for Nash to cover the rear. The sound grew closer, slow, rhythmic.
A
dragging noise.
Police.
Cole shouted. Show yourself.
Silence.
Then from the shadows at the far end of the corridor, a figure stepped into the light. An older man, gaunt and pale, wearing a lab coat smeared with dust. His eyes were wide, unfocused. He raised a trembling hand. Don't touch the machines, he rasped. They remember voices. Cole's gun didn't waver. Who are you? The man blinked slowly. Dr. Samuel Harland.
Or
what's left of him? Harland's confession came in fragments. He spoke of a DARPA-funded program from the early 2000s designed to test low-frequency conditioning subliminal commands delivered through ambient sound and electromagnetic resonance. When the government pulled funding, Harland continued the work privately under Carpenter, really using their rental units as controlled environments. It worked, he whispered, staring at the floor. First, the frequencies calmed them, made them compliant, but prolonged exposure. It changed them. They began hearing patterns in white noise, words that weren't part of the signal. Cole leaned
in.
You mean they started hallucinating? Harland shook his head. No, they started answering back. Nash exhaled sharply. Jesus, they talked to the walls, Harland continued. They learned the frequency. One of them, a woman in 207, she could repeat it perfectly. Even after the transmitters were turned off, she became a living echo. Cole felt a chill crawl down her spine. What happened to her? Heron's eyes glistened with terror.
We
moved her here to the black room, but the transmissions never stopped.
She
Still speaks in the static.
Cole
Exchanged a look with Nash. You're saying she's alive? Harlan's cracked. Lips trembled into something like a smile. Alive? Not anymore, but she still broadcasts. You can hear her if you know how to listen. Suddenly, all the monitors around them flickered to life. Static bled into the room. Across every screen, the same phrase scrolled in glowing white text. Frequency restored. Harlan stumbled backward. She's awake. Cole grabbed his arm. Who? The lights overhead dimmed, humming like 1,000 insects. The machines began cycling through channels faster and faster until the speakers screamed with overlapping voices, distorted, layered, inhuman. Then from the far end of the hall, a single voice rose above the chaos. Detective Cole, her name spoken in a woman's tone, calm, measured, and unmistakably human. You found my room. The voice came not from the speakers,
but from the walls themselves. Cole
turned, heart pounding. Every glass pane reflected her face, and behind her, reflection, faintly visible in each surface, was a woman's silhouette. Standing in the mirrored glass, watching, the lights flickered once more, and went out completely. When they came back on, Dr. Harland was gone. Only his lab coat remained, folded neatly on the floor, as though he had stepped out of
it.
Cole looked around the silent corridor. Every monitor now displayed the same static-filled image. A dim room, a single chair, a microphone hanging from the ceiling. Her earpiece hissed with feedback. Then the voice returned quieter this time. You shouldn't have opened the black room. And then everything went dark. The first thing that hit Detective Mara Vale when she stepped into apartment 6B again wasn't the sight. It was the sound. It wasn't even loud. In fact, it was barely there, like the faint hum of a refrigerator from another room or the static of a television that had been left on mute, but it vibrated. It crawled through the walls, up the floorboards, and into her jawbone like a current of invisible tension. Something in this apartment was alive. Mara switched on her audio recorder. October 14th, 2:17 a.m. Re-entering apartment 6B, following up on reports of low-frequency noise complaints. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. The Super Oliver Clay stood nervously at the threshold behind her. You sure you want to go in there alone? Tenant said. It gets worse at night. She glanced back. You said the maintenance room shares a wall with this unit, right? He nodded, fidgeting with his keys. Yeah, right behind the bedroom closet, but we checked it. Power box, fuse lines, plumbing. It's clean. Then, what's making that sound? Oliver swallowed. You tell me, detective. Mara stepped deeper into the apartment. The air was heavier than it should have been. Dense, humid, like the room itself was exhaling. The furniture hadn't moved since the last search. Couch overturned. Coffee table cracked. A single mug shattered near the kitchenette. But something had changed. The mirror above the mantel. She could have sworn it hadn't been there before. A large oval piece, its edges worn and discolored. When she tilted her flashlight toward it, the beam bounced back in warped ripples, distorting her reflection until her eyes looked hollow and elongated. That's when she noticed the crack running down its center. Then jagged like a lightning bolt frozen mid-strike, and the hum got louder when she stepped near it. Mara crouched beside the wall socket below the mirror and pressed her gloved hand against the drywall. She felt faint vibrations, not electric, not mechanical, resonant.
She
moved closer to the mirror. Oliver, where did this come from? He shook his head quickly. It wasn't here when we cleared the place last week. I swear it.
Hair got twisted.
Get maintenance records. For me. Who's been in or out of this unit since the tenant disappeared?
He
fumbled with his phone. Will do. As he left to make calls, Mara kept staring at that mirror. It reflected the entire living room, except she noticed the
doorway.
When she turned to check the door physically, it was right behind her. In the mirror, it was gone.
That
was when the frequency deepened. The hum
turned into a tone.
A single low vibration that made her eardrums pulse. The lamp on the table flickered, and her recorder buzzed with interference.
She
snatched it up. Audio log frequency. Increase corresponding with mirror.
Distortion.
The reflection shifted for half a second. Mara saw movement. Something like a shadow walking behind her. Except when she spun around, no one was there. But in the reflection, the shadow paused, then kept walking toward the hall. She exhaled shakily. Visual anomaly confirmed. She raised her phone to capture a photo. The instant she did, the mirror cracked further with a soft pop like a knuckle breaking. The tone
stopped.
Silence. Then a faint voice from inside her recorder. Can you hear
me?
Mara froze. She hadn't said that. Later that morning at the precinct, she played the audio again. The hum was there, but layered underneath it, barely audible, was whispering like multiple voices murmuring through static.
She's
in the wall. Turn it off. The mirror listens. Detective Jonah Pike leaned over her shoulder. You think this is some prank? EVP crap? Mara frowned.
No.
This isn't spiritual. It's signal-based. Radio bleed, maybe. Except she tapped the waveform on the screen. There's no modulation, no frequency source. Jonah crossed his arms, meaning she looked up, meaning the sound shouldn't exist in that range. He gave a skeptical grunt, or someone's playing games. Maybe the missing tenant rigged it. You said she was an acoustics engineer, right?
Mara
nodded. The tenant, Tessa Mororo, 35, freelance sound tech, had vanished 3 weeks ago. Last seen hauling equipment into her apartment. The landlord said she was quiet, paid rent on time, never had visitors. Then overnight, her door was found open, lights flickering, and that strange frequency was all that remained. 2 days later, Mara returned to the building with a city technician named Ron Wells. He carried an electromagnetic analyzer and a portable frequency meter. Place is definitely dirty, he muttered as they entered. You got all sorts of spikes between 19 and 22 hertz. Subsonic range that'll mess with your head, you know, makes you see things, hear whispers. Think someone's standing behind you. Mara grimaced.
And
the source. He pointed toward the wall, behind the mirror. It's coming from in there, deep inside. She nodded. That's where the maintenance room connects. They pulled back the mirror and unbolted the drywall panel. Behind it wasn't wiring. It was a thin, sealed chamber of metal, like a soundproof enclosure. What the hell? Ron muttered. He aimed his flashlight through the gap. Inside were cables, small speakers, and a central unit. A black box with no visible label.
Mara
recognized the design immediately. That's a signal feedback processor.
Ron
squinted. Homemade.
She leaned in.
Modified.
Look.
Dual in